Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is an updated version of the Detonating Arrow Marksman. Now with this build, it can push through the content really well, but getting into Empowered, the further into Empowered you get, it can become difficult to survive. Now I don't have very good gear on this character, so we didn't push super far into Empowered. We were able to clear monos and we were able to clear echoes and some of the bosses. However, survivability, there were quite a few deaths, so you definitely want to build a lot more dodge than I have, cap your resistances than I have in this video, but this build can do really well once you get the gear for it. This build will revolve around using Detonating Arrow, to which your first hit's going to apply an arming arrow to the enemy. This will automatically detonate after a very short amount of time, or you can hit it again and then it will cause a big explosion much sooner than it would have, which can clear out full AoE, and against single targets you can have 100% crit and do really good damage. Now it's not going to be the fastest single target clear out there. It's kind of clunky when it comes to clearing echoes because mobs aren't grouped together as much, but if you like to run trains, kite a bit, and round them up, you can take them all out with just one blast. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the skills, the interactions, and just how this build works. For skills, I'm running Decoy, Shift, Smoke Bomb, Flurry, and Detonating Arrow with +1 level. For Decoy, we've got 5 points in Boom, 3 points in Efficient Construction, 2 points in Sonic Detonation, 3 points in Ear Shatter, 2 points in Harrowing Noise, and 5 points in Warning Sound. We're basically using this as a decoy. We're going to cast it every now and then, or you can put it on autocast if you want. Not recommended, but sometimes it's what I do. And basically you're just going to distract the enemies for a little bit, and it gives you some time to run away if you're in a position where you're taking a lot of damage or expect to take a lot of damage. For Shift, we have this set up to give us a bonus of damage, a lot of dodge, and to get some haste. We've got 2 points in Shadow Recuperation, 3 points in Jade Quiver, and 5 points in Jagged Arrows. So when you shift, you will gain 3 Jade Arrows. These will give you increased critical strike chance as well as critical strike multiplier. We got 3 points in Swift Recovery, so we'll gain some mana back after we shift. 2 points of Momentum gives us haste for 1 second after we shift. 1 point in Shadow Slip, so we're invulnerable while shifting. And 4 points in Elusive will give us 120 flat dodge rating for 1 second per point of dex we have after shifting, which will put you up towards the 80% to 85% cap. For Smoke Bomb, we're using this to slow the enemies as well as to get critical strike chance with our bow. And we have 1 point in Thick Smoke, 3 points in Generosity, 1 point in Concealed in Carnage, and then 5 points in Bolt Lingering, Fumes, and Shadow Hunter for that 10% base crit. It'll also blind enemies with bow attacks, and it will make it last 50% longer. For Flurry, we have it set up just to be a mana generator. We got 3 points in Alacrity, 2 points in Blood Reverie, 1 point in Second Wind, 2 points in Sap Willpower, 2 points in Relentless, 2 points in Adrenaline Rush, 3 points in Giant Slayer, so it'll do extra damage against bosses, 3 points in Exhaustible, and 2 points in Strained Reflexes. And then for Detonating Arrow itself, we changed up the skill tree quite a bit. There's a lot of different ways to do it. We went for more of an explosion type damage area. You can also just hit a mob or tag a mob with it and then run away, and it will explode with the tendrils. So it's kind of good for both AoE and a big explosion, as well as kind of a kiting hit and run type situation. So we've got 1 point in Shock Arrow, 1 point in Sucker Punch Arrow, 2 points in Fast Shot, then 4 points in Arcing Blast. What's nice about this, it shoots out lightning tendrils that can also shock and they'll penetrate lightning damage, but it allows you, when an enemy has an explosion go off, it's going to cause it to chain basically and hit several other enemies with lightning tendrils, or basically lightning blast type things, and it'll hit lots of enemies, allowing you to have really good AoE. So even if the explosion misses, these chain out even further and allow you to hit more enemies. 1 point in Piercing Thunder, 1 point in Quick Detonation, 1 point in Weak Spots, so you have some critical strike multiplier and more crit chance. This also reduces the arming time a little bit, so you don't have to wait as long for it to explode. Of course, that's just going to offset the 2 points we put in Beast Slayer Arrow. This increases the arming time, the damage, and of course the longer that it's on them, the more damage that it will do. We then have 3 points in Outburst for the explosion area, 1 point in Infused Discharge. Consumes some of your mana, a little extra mana every time that you cast it. This is going to cause it to do a little bit more damage. 3 points in Well Crafted gives it more explosion damage and explosion area, and 1 point in Rapid Detonation means that if you hit an enemy that's already got an armed arrow in them, it's going to explode immediately instead of waiting the arming time. For passives, we got 20 points in the Rogue base class with 8 points in Steady Hand, 8 points in Guile, and 4 points in Sapping Strikes. And then all of our points go on the Marksman, our Master class, with 8 points in Draining Arrows, 2 points in Assassin's Quiver, 10 points in Wound Maker, 5 points in Heightened Senses, 8 points in Concentration, 1 point in Meditation, 8 points in Reflection, and then 8 points in Elemental Arrows. This will give you 16 added lightning damage with your lightning attacks, or elemental attacks. In this case it'll be Detonating Arrow, and that'll be when you have elemental arrows. You'll get elemental arrows for running around, or if you use Flurry, that will generate some as well. And then we got 8 points in Fire and Steel, so that for every arrow, elemental arrow, that's consumed when you do an attack, so your detonating arrow, after you've stacked up a few of them, the next few hits it does will deal 120% increased damage. Then we've got 10 points in Thief's Quiver, 1 point in Barrage of Pain, 5 points in Perfect Aim, 6 points in Sniper's Gambit, 10 points in Ethereal Arrows, and 2 points in Master Archer. For items and idols, so we have no uniques on this build. There are some uniques you could wear if you wanted. You can play around with them, but here we just have some basically well-rounded crafted items. They're not top geared. There's also no exalted here. This build can get much better, especially defensively, than the way that we have it here. For the bow, we've got added bow physical damage as well as attack speed. We also have shock and slow. Now we do have added bow physical damage. Remember that Detonating Arrow converts all damage types into lightning, so that's technically 17 added lightning damage for the Detonating Arrow skill. It's also applied at 150% effectiveness, so it'd actually be a little bit higher with that. There's also a few bows that you can go with. We went with the Dreadthorn, but there's a couple of the top tier ones that'll work just as well. There's one that comes with elemental damage increase as well as a lot of fire and physical damage, and that one will work just as well because it'll all get converted to lightning. For the quiver, we went with bow attack speed, bow physical damage, shock and shred armor on hit. We got +1 detonating arrow on the chest with increased damage while wielding a bow. Then we got dodge rating and elemental resist, and I'm just going to hover over the rest of these. Basically it's a mix of dodge and some resistances. We also went with some mana regen on all of the items that we could get it, so that we wouldn't have to worry about using Flurry. We would be able to just kind of spam detonating arrow for a really long period of time, which is how it works. You don't really have to worry about ever using Flurry. Maybe in a boss situation where you're just spamming this, detonating arrow over and over and over again, not taking any breaks. But for the most part, you'll be able to spam it as much as you want. For idols, we got a bunch of different types. We got 1x3s that have elemental resist with shred armor on bow hit. We got some 1x4s with critical strike chance and increased bow damage. 1x2s with shock on hit and elemental resist. You can also run hybrid health ones. More health will raise your EHP. We got some 1x1s that have some armor and elemental resist. For the character sheet, as you can see, we only have about 1400 health. We're not capped on any resistances, and we only have about 13% armor, and without anything going, we have about 15% dodge. We have quite a bit of damage in quite a few categories, the most important being that we have that lightning damage, which is sitting at about 330, and we have about 220 critical strike multiplier. For defense, we don't have 100% critical strike avoidance, and we don't have much endurance. Both of these you're going to want to build into. That'll really make it to where Empowered actually feels better. Right now I can get critically struck, and we're already having more damage dealt to us because we don't have capped resistance, so it's kind of a problem with Empowered right now. I could still run all the echoes, but some of the bosses were really challenging, even a couple of deaths in order to get through them. But again, you cap the resist, you get a little bit more endurance, maybe 60% endurance. You can keep the threshold the same, and then of course get that 100% critical strike avoidance. You're going to feel a lot more tanky, and it's going to be a lot easier to progress through Empowered. In non-Empowered content, this build is already easy. You can just fly through, and of course you're going to be shifting. You're going to have your dust shroud clouds from smoke bomb and all of that, and it's going to allow you to do just a lot more dodging, and you're going to have a very high chance to dodge. When we shift, I mean, just look, when we shift, we go up to 79% for a second. So not only are you invulnerable while you shift, but right after you shift, it's also going to be really hard for them to hit you. And then of course when we have smoke bomb going off, you're going to see that our dodge goes way up with those dust shrouds. So you want to stay in there and get a few stacks. That'll put you up to 45%. And of course, as you get better gear, like I said, we're only wearing like tier 10 to tier 12 stuff right now. It's just basic stuff. You can get a lot more dodge. You can probably get closer to about 30 to 40% without any of those buffs or before anything even takes place, and then you'll be that much more defensive. Now when it comes to how to play the build, I like to put Smoke Bomb and Decoy both on autocast unless I'm in boss fights and then I want to time it better, but through echoes I put them on autocast, and then all you got to do is shift around and go through the echoes, you know, speed run to the end, and use your Decoy arrow to do as much damage as you can. Here you can see that we're critting for about 50k damage once we have a few stacks of shock. You have a very high crit chance with this build, and then you can also see that our mana regen is really helping us. We can stay, even while spamming the other skills, we can use the skill almost 100% uptime. We do run into a little bit of trouble, but you can just switch to Flurry for a second and you'll get all your mana back. And then once again, you can go back to doing your big AoEs. You can see that the AoE of this, the explosion, does about the same size as the ring around the training dummy, so it really helps clear things out. Also, you can tag things, like I said, you just do one attack, you can run away, and it's going to do an explosion. So when I do echoes, I like to just tag a mob, and then I just keep running, and I try to keep everything behind me and just fire one arrow backwards every now and then, and it'll clear out the whole train behind me. So I just keep running forward, keep shifting forward, and just throw an arrow behind me, and that's pretty much the playstyle for me. And it's not as good, in my opinion, as like multi-shot. I hate the fact that it's a single target and you don't have the AoE with multiple arrows. It doesn't really auto-aim at all, so it can be difficult to hit targets every once in a while. Your aim's got to be like spot on. But overall, it is still a fun build. I'm not a huge fan of the Marksman, but for people who do like the Marksman, it's a fun build. And that's going to be it from me, so go ahead and enjoy some gameplay, and as always, stay safe, travelers.